The General Certificate of Education Advanced Level, or A-Level, is a secondary school leaving qualification in the United Kingdom, offered as a main qualification in England, Wales, and Northern Ireland, as an alternative qualification in Scotland, and as an international school qualification worldwide. A-Levels require studying an offered A-Level subject over a 2-year period and sitting for an examination at the end of each year, proctored by an official assessment body. Most students study 3 or 4 A-Level subjects simultaneously during Year 12 and Year 13 either in a secondary education institution or in a sixth form college, as part of their further education. A-Levels are regarded as equivalent in level to the BTEC Level 3 qualifications. A-Levels are recognized by many universities as the standard for assessing the suitability of applicants for admission in England, Wales, and Northern Ireland, and many such universities base their conditional admissions offers on a student's predicted A-Level grades. Curriculum History of A-Levels A-Levels were introduced in 1951 as a standardized 18+ qualification, replacing the higher school certificate. The examinations could be taken on a subject-by-subject basis, according to the strengths and interests of the student. This encouraged specialization and in-depth study of 3 to 4 subjects. The A-Level at first was graded as simply distinction, pass or fail. Candidates obtaining a distinction originally had the option to sit a scholarship-level paper on the same material, to attempt to win one of 400 national scholarships. The scholarship level was replaced by the S-Level in 1963. Quite soon rising numbers of students taking the exam made it clear that there needed to be more differentiation of achievement. Grades were therefore introduced. Between 1963 and 1986 the grades were norm-referenced, AA Euro top 10%, BA Euro next 15%, CA Euro next 10%, DA Euro next 15%, EA Euro next 20%, O, next 20%. This was equivalent to a GCE ordinary level pass, which indicated a performance equivalent to at least a grade C at ordinary level. Fail a Euro final 10%. Over time, the validity of this system was questioned because, rather than reflecting a standard, norm referencing simply maintained a specific proportion of candidates at each grade, which in small cohorts was subject to statistical fluctuations in standards. In 1984, the Government Secondary Examinations Council decided to replace the norm referencing with criteria referencing. Grades would in future be awarded on examiner judgment, thus eliminating a possible inadequacy of the existing scheme. The criteria referencing scheme came into effect for the summer 1987 exams as the system set examiners specific criteria for the awarding of B and D grades to candidates, and then divided out the other grades according to fixed percentages. Rather than awarding an ordinary level for the lowest pass, a new N was introduced. Criticisms of A-Level grading continued, and when Curriculum 2000 was introduced, the decision was made to have specific criteria for each grade, and the N grade was abolished. In 1989, advanced supplementary awards were introduced. They were intended to broaden the subjects a pupil studied post-16, and were to complement rather than be part of a pupil's A-Level studies. AS levels were generally taken over 2 years, and in a subject the pupil was not studying at A-Level. Each AS level contained half the content of an A-Level, and at the same level of difficulty. Initially, a student might study 3 subjects at A-Level and 1 at AS level, or often even 4 subjects at A-Level. However, due to decreasing public spending on education over time, a growing number of schools and sixth form colleges would now arrange for their pupils to study for 3 A-Levels instead of 4. A-Levels evolved gradually from a 2-year linear course with an exam at the end, to a modular course, between the late 1980s and 2000. By the year 2000 there was a strong educational reason to standardize the exam and offer greater breadth to students through modules, and there was also a pragmatic case based on the inefficiency of linear courses where up to 30% of students were failing to complete or pass. The Curriculum 2000 reforms also replaced the S-Level extension paper with the Advanced Extension Award. Curriculum 2000 Following the introduction of Curriculum 2000 in September 2000, An A-level now consists of 4 modules studied over 2 years. Normally, 2 modules are assessed in the first year, and make up a standalone qualification called the A1 per second level. Another 2 modules are assessed at the end of the second year, which make up the A2. A2 modules do not form a qualification in their own right. The satisfactory completion of the AS and A2 modules in the same subject is required to constitute a complete A-level. Modules are assessed by exam papers marked by national organizations and internally assessed coursework. Modular versus linear. The Conservative Party under Prime Minister David Cameron initiated reforms for A-levels to change from the current modular to a linear structure. British examination boards regulated and accredited by the Government of the United Kingdom responded to the government's reform announcements by modifying syllabi of several A-level subjects. However, the Labour Party and in particular Tristram Hunt MP announced that it would halt and reverse the reforms and maintain the modular A-level system. In addition, the Labour Party, Tristram Hunt and the modular AS and A-level system are supported and promoted by the University of Cambridge and by the University of Oxford. The newly introduced GCE Applied A-level suite, taken from the old VCE A-levels, generally has a more vocational twist. For example, the new GCE A-level in Applied Business combines the traditional theory-based subject business studies and adds a more practical and hands-on approach to it. In this case, for the mandatory modules in the AS year, the candidate is expected to create a simulated marketing proposal and recruitment and motivational package as opposed to just studying the processes. This essentially asks the candidate to show a more thorough insight by actually applying the theory. Given that many universities have shown a dislike of vocational subjects as opposed to the traditional ones, their reaction to the new applied suite remains to be seen. However, considering the subject is now much broader and more student-friendly, it is hoped that universities will see that this subject is no less than the traditional business studies, given that the traditional aspect of the subject is not fully lost. The new GCE Applied A-levels are available in Art and Design, ICT, Business, Science, and Health and Social Care. Subjects offered equals. A wide variety of subjects are offered at A-level by the 5 exam boards. Although exam boards often alter their curricula, this table shows the majority of subjects which are consistently available for study. Process. Studying equals, the number of A-level exams taken by students can vary. A typical route in the state sector is to study 4 subjects at AS level and then drop down to 3 at A2 level, although some students continue with their 4th subject. 3 is usually the minimum number of A-levels required for university entrance, with some universities specifying the need for a 4th AS subject. There is no limit set on the number of A-levels one can study, and a number of students take 5 or more A-levels. It is permissible to take A-levels in languages one already speaks fluently, or courses with overlapping content, even if not always fully recognized by universities. General studies and critical thinking, which require a grasp of basic political ideas and current affairs in order to write essays rather than specific learning, sometimes augment a student's batch of qualifications. While many universities do not consider an A-level in general studies to be a standalone subject, it may affect the offer which a student receives. For example, a student of mathematics, physics and computing might receive an offer of BBC for a physics degree, whereas one also taking general studies might receive BCC. Unlike A-level general studies, critical thinking, which aims to improve students' analytical skills, has generally received a more positive reception from universities. Unlike general studies, it is often given a UCAS tariff score, and some university admissions tutors see it as an advantage when applying for competitive courses. The A-level has been criticized for providing less breadth since many A-level students do not generally study more than 3 subjects in their final year. A major part of this criticism is that, while a 3 or 4 subject curriculum can be balanced across the spectrum, a language subject, and a creative subject like art studies, in many cases students choose 3 closely linked subjects, for instance, mathematics, physics and chemistry, or sociology, psychology, and politics. This is in part due to university entrance requirements, which, for degree programs such as medicine, may require 3 related A-level subjects, but non-traditional combinations are becoming more common. Thus, while the purpose of Curriculum 2000 was to encourage students to undertake contrasting subjects, to broaden their skill base, there is a tendency to pursue similar disciplines. However, others disagree, arguing that the additional AS level, S, studied would already have provided more breadth compared with the old system. Grading and international comparisons equals, the pass grades for A levels are A, B, C, D and E. The A grade was introduced for higher education entry into top universities such as Oxford and Cambridge, and is awarded to candidates who achieve an A in their overall A level, with a score of at least 90% at A2. There is no A grade at AS or unit level. In mathematics and further mathematics, the criterion for the A grade is slightly more complex and can vary with some exam boards. According to UCAS and HKEAA, the Hong Kong A-level examination has historically been benchmarked against the UK A-levels. In general, a UK A grade is broadly equivalent to a Hong Kong AC grade. This conclusion is based mainly on the percentage of pupils achieving the respective grades in respective exams. In the UK, on average 25% of participants of each subject achieved an A grade every year, compared to the 25% AC rate in Hong Kong. A Euro A, 4%, AB, AC. According to the BBC, the percentage of students achieving an A is about 8 to Euro 10%, which essentially lies within the AB range of their Hong Kong counterparts in respective subjects. Recent research and the corresponding findings have shown that over a time span of several years, students from Ireland would outperform students from England and Wales in A-level examinations. UK General Certificate of Education, Advanced Level. In comparison to US High School, in the United States of America, the US High School Diploma is the required qualification for entry into college. In the United Kingdom, the high school diploma is considered to be at the level of the General Certificate of Secondary Education, which is awarded at Year 11. For college and university admissions, the high school diploma may be accepted in lieu of the GCSE if an average grade of C is obtained in subjects with a GCSE counterpart. As the more academically rigorous A levels awarded at Year 13 are expected for university admission, the high school diploma alone is generally not considered to meet university requirements. Students who wish to study in the United Kingdom may additionally participate in the Advanced Placement or International Baccalaureate programs, which are considered to be at the level of the A-level qualifications and earn points on the UCAS tariff, or may opt to take A-level examinations in British international schools or as private candidates. College entrance examination board tests, such as the SAT, SAT subject tests, or the ACT, may also be considered. The Universities and Colleges Admissions Service recommends that in addition to a high school diploma, grades of 3 or above and at least 2, or ideally 3, advanced placement exams may be considered as meeting general entry requirements for admission. The IB diploma may also be accepted. For the college entrance examination board tests, a minimum score of 600 or higher in all sections of the SAT or a minimum score of 26 or higher in all sections of the ACT along with a minimum score of 600 in relevant SAT subject tests may be considered as meeting general entry requirements for admission. Special educational needs for GCE level examinations for students with learning difficulties. For students with learning difficulties, an injury, repetitive strain injury or a disability, help is offered in these forms: extra time, an amanuensis, a word processor can be used by students who have trouble writing legibly or who are unable to write quickly enough to complete the exam, a different format exam paper, a reader, a different room. All of the above must be approved by the exam board concerned. There are other forms of help available, but these are the most commonly used. Examination boards A-level examinations in the UK are currently administered through 5 awarding bodies: AQA, OCR, EdXL, WJEC and CCEA. The present 5 can trace their roots via a series of mergers or acquisitions to one or more of the originally 9 GCE examination boards. Additionally, there are 2 examination boards offering A-level qualifications internationally, EdXL and the CIE. OCR and CIE are both branches of the parent organisation, Cambridge Assessment. In the UK it is customary for schools to register with multiple examination boards and to mix and match A-levels to get a combined curriculum that fits the school profile. Usage. United Kingdom A-levels are part of the further education process in the United Kingdom. A-levels can also be studied by students in years 12 and 13 in a sixth form institution, as part of secondary school. This is an integrated part of a secondary education institution in many areas of the country, while others have separate sixth form colleges. This is normally done as a direct continuation of the secondary education process, and hence most students study for the qualification from ages 16 to 18. Though, there is formally no age restriction. Students require at least 5 GCSE grades, including English and mathematics, to meet the prerequisite to start A-levels. Scotland, A-levels are offered as an alternate qualification by a small number of educational institutions in Scotland, in place of the standard Scottish Higher, and the advanced higher levels of the Scottish Qualifications Certificate. The schools that offer A-levels are mainly private fee-paying schools, particularly for students wishing to attend university in England. International schools. Many international schools choose to use the British system for their wide recognition. Furthermore, students may choose to sit the papers of British examination bodies at education centres around the world, such as those belonging to the British Council. According to the British Council, A-levels are similar to the American advanced placements, which are themselves equivalent to first-year courses of America's 4-year bachelor's degrees. University admissions. Because A-level students often apply to universities before they have taken their final exams, British universities consider predicted A-level results when deciding whether applicants should be offered places. Unless the admission offer is guaranteed, without regard to actual official marks eventually achieved by the student, these conditional offers to students typically become void should the student fail to achieve the marks expected by the university. Universities may specify which subjects they wish these grades to be in. However, universities may be flexible if a student narrowly missed the required grades. A-level grades are also sometimes converted into numerical scores, notably through the UCAS University Admission System. For example, under the UCAS system, an A grade at A-level is worth 140 points, while an A is worth 120, a B is worth 100. A C is worth 80, a D is 60, and a E is worth 40. So a university may instead demand that an applicant achieve 280 points, instead of the equivalent offer of BBC. This allows greater flexibility to students, as 280 points could also, for example, be achieved through the combination ABD, which would not have met the requirements of a BBC offer because of the D grade. Depending on the specific offer made, a combination of more than 3 subjects with lower grades, or points from non-academic input such as higher-level music grades or a key skills course, may also be accepted by the university. The text of the offer determines whether this flexibility is available. Euro 280 UCAS points likely would, while 280 UCAS points from 3 A-level subjects would not. International variance. There are currently 2 examination boards which provide an international variant of the United Kingdom A-level examinations to international students. These are Cambridge International Examinations and EdXL. International A-level is widely available worldwide, with more than 125 countries providing the program with 60 different choices of subjects. Unlike the current modular system implemented in the UK, the CIE A-level, or more commonly known as the Cambridge A-level, practices a terminal examination system. Students are required to sit for 2 major exams, AS and A2, at the end of each academic year. Each of the major exams carries the weightage of 50% to form a complete A-level. However, EdXL A-level students will be sitting the same paper as the students in UK concurrently. Additionally, Countries outside of the United Kingdom have established academic qualifications with the same or similar name, and with a similar format, to the United Kingdom A-levels. However, these qualifications may be distinct in certain ways from those offered in the United Kingdom. Awarding, please note, 2015 grades are currently provisional. UK A-level classifications from June 1989 to 2015 equals. Note, norm grades allocated per the norm referenced percentile quotas described above. Criticism and controversy. Grade inflation equals. The most common criticism of the A-level system is an accusation of grade inflation. The press have noted the steady rise in average grades for several consecutive years and drawn the conclusion that A-levels are becoming consistently easier. In an educational report, Robert Coe compared students' scores in the ALIS ability test with equivalent grades achieved in A-level exams over the period of approximately 20 years. He found that students of similar ability were achieving on average about 2 grades higher in the past than they were in the present. In the case of maths, it was nearer to 3.5 grades higher. The government and teaching bodies maintain that the improved grades represent higher levels of achievement due to improved and more experienced teaching methods, but some educationalists and journalists argue that the change is due to grade inflation and the examinations getting easier. It has also been suggested that government pressure on schools to achieve high examination results has led them to coach students to pass the examination rather than understand the subject. In 2000, the A-level system was changed to examine students at the end of each of the 2 years of A-level study, rather than only at the end of the 2 years. The results of the first-year examinations has allowed students to drop subjects they find difficult after 1 year and to retake examinations to achieve a higher grade. The ability of unlimited resits, with the best mark going through, has improved results. Some believe that students are tending to select easier subjects instead of harder ones in order to achieve higher grades. Universities in Britain have complained that the increasing number of A grades awarded makes it hard to distinguish between students at the upper end of the ability spectrum. The C grade was originally intended to represent the average ability, and students typically required 60% or higher across all assessments to attain it. However, the average result is now at the lower end of the B grade. Many universities have introduced their own entrance tests such as the BMAT and LNAT for specific courses, or conduct interviews to select applicants. In addition, the head of admissions at the University of Cambridge outlined changes he believed should be made to the current system, particularly the use of the Advanced Extension Awards, a more challenging qualification based on the more advanced content of the A-level syllabus. More universities have wanted to see applicants' individual module results to see how comfortably they have achieved their result. There are fears that the A-level may not offer an accurate test of ability, nor will it be a good prediction of future academic success. Grade fixing. Concern over A-level grading became national news when The Observer ran a story making claims that A-level results had been fixed. It was alleged that students had been given lower marks than they deserved in order to fix overall results, making the pass rate seem lower than it really should have been and so disproving that A-levels were becoming too easy. This resulted in the Tomlinson inquiry. As a result, some papers were remarked but only 1,220 A-level and 733 AS-level students saw an improvement to their results. Reformations equals, in response to concerns shown by employers and universities that it is not possible to distinguish between the large number of students achieving A grades, and in order to mirror the current GCSE standards, a debate arose as to whether a new, higher Super A grade should be introduced. As will be seen in the future, it was generally agreed that bringing in higher grades would be a much better idea than raising the grade boundaries to keep the standards consistent, and it has been proposed that on top of the A, an A grade should be available at A level in order to stretch the most able students while still allowing others to achieve the grades they deserve. From A2 exams sat in the future, the highest A-level grade will be A, requiring an A grade overall and 90% overall average UMS in A2 papers. The most recent reformation of the mathematics syllabus, following calls that it was too hard, has attracted criticism for allegedly being made easier. In the change, content consisting of 3 modules was spread to 4 modules. It is alleged that this makes the course easier as students do less work for the same qualifications. Further reforms to make the mathematics syllabus more popular have been met with mixed opinions. Supporters cite it will reverse the downward trend in students taking the subject, whilst others are concerned that the subject is being still incredibly difficult. Despite ongoing work to improve the image of A-levels in the business community, a number of business leaders are beginning to express concern about the suitability of the qualification for school leavers and to urge the adoption of the International Baccalaureate in the UK as an alternative qualification at schools. In addition, concerns were raised by Sir Mike Rake, chairman of BT Group, Sir Terry Leahy, chairman of Tesco, and by Sir Christopher Gent, chairman of GlaxoSmithKline. Some schools have also moved to offering the Cambridge Pre-U as an alternative to A-levels and with higher tariffs. Burden of assessment with increased modularization of subjects, the amount of time that young adults are spending being examined in the UK has risen considerably. It was estimated in a report by educationalists that by the age of 19 children will have spent an entire year of their school education being assessed. As a result of such criticisms about the burden of assessment, since candidates have taken 4 papers for most A-levels, instead of 6 as in the past. This means that there are 2 modules for AS and 2 more for A2 for the majority of A-levels. However, this will not be the case for all A-levels. Biology, human biology, chemistry, physics, electronics, geology, music, Welsh and science will continue with 6 units, 3 units for AS and A2 respectively, and 600 UMS for the A-level. Mathematics will not change structurally in the modular reform. It will stay on 600 UMS, but it will include the new A grade and a stretch and challenge provision. Also, Bengali, Modern Hebrew, Punjabi, Polish, Arabic, Japanese, Modern Greek, Biblical Hebrew, Dutch, Gujarati, Persian, Portuguese, and Turkish will remain at 2 units, 1 for AS and 1 for A2. However, they will move to 200 UMS for A-level. Chinese will also move to 200 UMS, but instead of 2 units, it will move to 3 units, AS will have 2 units, A2 will have 1. It is the first A-level to have an odd number of units since Curriculum 2000. Cambridge University has warned that it is extremely unlikely that it will accept applicants who are taking 2 or more supposedly softer A-level subjects out of 3. It has outlined a list of subjects it considers to be unsuitable, which includes accounting, design and technology, film studies, information and communication technology, media studies, photography, and sports studies. As a result of dislike of the modular system, many schools now offer the alternative International Baccalaureate diploma qualification. The course offers more subjects, extracurricular activity, a philosophical epistemological component known as theory of knowledge, as well as the requirement of an extended essay on any subject of a candidate's choice. Unlike the current ASA2 system, the International Baccalaureate is not based on a modular system. The diploma program, administered by the International Baccalaureate, is a recognized pre-university educational program. Former British Prime Minister Tony Blair recently suggested that one state school in every county should offer the International Baccalaureate diploma program as an alternative to A-levels. Predicted grading A possible reformation would be something called the post-qualifications application system, where applicants apply to university after they receive their results. It has been argued that this would be fairer to applicants, especially those from lower-income families whose results were thought to be under-predicted. However, a more recent UCAS report shows that although the reliability of predicted grades declines in step with family income, this can still lead to an over-prediction effect for lower-income groups. Just 45% of predicted grades are accurate, 47% over-predictions and 9% under-predictions. A recent UCAS consultation rejected the implementation of PQA following opposition from universities, schools and awarding bodies. See also, GCES Level/Special Level, GCE Advanced Extension Award, A-Level, Advanced Higher School Certificate, IB Diploma Programme, European Baccalaureate. References